I've been delivering groceries for almost 2 years now, mostly for the same chain of stores, a regional delivery app that pays just enough to keep my rent and gas covered. It's quiet work. I don't talk to people much anymore. I just drive, listen to the voice on the GPS, and drop bags on doorsteps. I'll never walk through. It's repetitive, mechanical, but I've grown to like it that way. Then one morning, I saw a delivery request that didn't make sense. The address field was blank, just coordinates. The pay rate was triple the normal amount, tagged as remote drop-off, special clearance required. I thought it was a glitch, but before I could decline it, the app buzzed with a message I'd never seen before. Accept this route if you are willing to deliver to Ashford Hollow. I blinked at the name. I'd lived in this state my whole life and never heard of it. When I looked it up online, nothing came up. No businesses, no postal code, not even a mention on any map. Still, the coordinates were real. They led somewhere deep in the woods, about 50 miles north. I almost dismissed it, but rent was due in 2 days, and my tank was already near empty. So, I accepted. That same moment, a confirmation email arrived, not from the app, but from a personal address. It had no subject line, just a message that said, "Thank you for accepting the Ashford Hollow route. Please read the enclosed delivery guide carefully before departure." Attached was a PDF titled, "Guidelines for Delivery Personnel, Confidential." The file was only 2 pages long. The first page listed the usual things: wear your uniform, confirm delivery code, avoid photos on private property. But the second page was strange. It started with a warning written in bold red letters. Ashford Hollow is an old community. Its residents have certain sensitivities. Please do not startle them. Then, below that, do not enter any home, even if invited. Do not accept food or drink. If you hear singing after sunset, leave immediately. I laughed at first. It felt like a prank. Some creep with too much time on their hands. But the payment amount still sat there, locked and pending. Nearly $800 for one delivery. I told myself it was just a marketing stunt. Some influencer project or weird scavenger hunt thing. So, I packed up the groceries from the pickup store, checked my route twice, and set out before dusk. The drive started normally enough, long stretches of highway, then smaller county roads. Eventually, my GPS stopped naming the streets and switched to coordinates again. The last gas station I passed looked abandoned, but the pumps still worked. The cashier, an older man with sunken eyes, didn't say much until he noticed the coordinates on my phone. Then he froze. "You headed up that way?" he asked quietly. I nodded. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Don't stop for anyone once you pass the iron bridge, even if they wave you down." His voice trembled like he wasn't joking. When I left, I realized he'd slipped something into my bag, an old disposable flashlight. There was tape wrapped around it, with a single word written in pen: "Keep." The sun was already sinking behind the tree line when I crossed the bridge. My GPS flickered once, then the screen went black. That's when I saw it, a wooden sign half buried in the dirt on the roadside. Barely legible in the fading light, it read, "Welcome to Ashford Hollow. Population 47. But someone had scratched out the number. Underneath, carved into the wood by hand, was a different number, 0. The road past the sign narrowed until it was little more than a trail through the trees. Branches scraped the sides of my car, leaving faint scratches that sounded louder than they should have. The forest pressed in close, too close, like it had grown over the asphalt to hide it from the world. I kept driving because turning around felt worse. There was no signal, no GPS, no streetlights. Just that voice in the back of my mind whispering, "Get it done, drop it off, go home." Then, out of nowhere, I saw a faint light ahead. A lantern. A figure stepped into the road, holding it up. He wore a pale gray uniform, almost like a store clerk's vest, but it was faded and dirty. His face was calm but distant, his eyes hidden behind a pair of dark, thick glasses that reflected the lantern's glow. I rolled down my window. "Hey, I'm here for a grocery drop-off. Ashford Hollow?" He nodded slowly, as if the words took a moment to register. Then he said, "You must be the substitute." Before I could ask what he meant, he motioned for me to follow him. I drove behind him down a slope until the forest opened into what looked like a small valley village. A cluster of crooked houses and winding dirt paths. No power lines, no streetlights, just oil lamps and candles glowing in windows. He led me to a wooden building that might have once been a general store. A faded sign above the door read Ashford Supply. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and cold earth. The man set down his lantern on the counter and reached under it, pulling out a thin folder. "You'll deliver to the residents," he said quietly. "We don't get many from outside anymore. Some don't understand the changes." "What kind of changes?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he slid the folder toward me. Inside was a printed list, the rules, typed on yellowed paper. He told me to read them carefully, and not to ask questions I didn't want answered. The list read, "Rules for deliveries in Ashford HOLOW deliver, before midnight. Never after, do not knock. Leave the groceries on the porch and step back at least 10 feet. If someone comes out to speak with you, do not look directly at their face. If they ask for help carrying the bags inside, refuse politely. Never take photos or recordings in the hollow. The camera will not work correctly. If you hear someone calling your name from the woods, it is not anyone you know. Do not answer once all deliveries are complete. Return here and wait for clearance to leave." I read the list twice, then looked up. "Is this a joke?" He shook his head. "Do you think it feels like one?" His tone was calm, but something about the way he stood, completely still, head slightly tilted as if listening for something distant, made my chest tighten. "I'm just a delivery driver," I said. "If this is some kind of role-play community, you'll be fine," he interrupted. "Just follow the rules." "Most do. Double quotes. Most." He handed me a flashlight identical to the one the gas station clerk had given me. The tape around it was newer, though white instead of yellow. The word written on it was different, to stay. He noticed me staring. "Keep that close," he said softly. "The light helps them stay away." "Who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he gave me a sheet of delivery codes and circled 7 houses on an old map of the hollow. Each was marked only by a number, not a name. 7 homes, he said. "You'll find the residents waiting. They always know when supplies arrive." As I turned to leave, I noticed a corkboard on the wall, full of old, yellowed photos. Delivery drivers, each one standing in front of the store, smiling awkwardly for the camera. But every single photo had one thing in common. The driver's face was scratched out, with a thin blade. I felt my stomach twist. Before I stepped outside, the man called after me. "One more thing," he said. "If you see any lights out there that aren't lanterns, don't follow them." I nodded, more to end the conversation than because I believed him. The night had fallen completely by the time I loaded the first bag. The village looked almost unreal under the pale moonlight, houses leaning against each other, windows covered with thick cloth instead of glass. The silence was so deep that even my footsteps sounded wrong. At house number 1, I followed the rules, set the groceries down, stepped back 10 feet, waited. For a while, nothing happened. Then the door creaked open. A figure stepped out. Small frame, thin arms. A woman, I think. She moved slowly, her head tilted slightly toward me, but I noticed something that made my breath catch. Her eyes were closed. Not naturally, but sealed shut, like the skin had grown over them. She smiled gently and whispered, "Thank you." Then she reached into her pocket and held out something wrapped in cloth. For your kindness. Rule number 2 flashed through my mind. Do not accept food or drink. I shook my head. Sorry, ma'am, I can't. Her smile faded. She tilted her head again, confused, then quietly turned and disappeared back inside. The door closed, and that's when I heard it. A low humming sound from somewhere behind the house. Slow off-key, like someone was trying to remember a song they'd forgotten. I backed away, flashlight in hand, and didn't stop until I reached the next house on the list. That was when I realized every single window in Ashford Hollow was covered. Every house looked blind, and yet, somehow, I still felt watched. The second house was even smaller than the first. A squat, leaning cabin with its porch swallowed in vines. I checked the list. House number 2. Drop the bags. Step back 10 feet. Easy. Mechanical. I set the groceries down and waited, counting the seconds under my breath. At first, nothing happened. The woods were utterly still. No wind, no insects, not even the creak of branches. It was like the whole valley had stopped breathing. Then, from inside, came a sound like footsteps dragging along wood. Slow, uneven. The door opened halfway. A man's voice spoke from the dark. You're not the usual one. My chest tightened. No, sir, I'm filling in. He stepped into the doorway, head turned toward me, though not quite at me. His eyelids were fused shut, just like the woman's. Thin scars webbed across his cheeks, like old burns. You shouldn't be here, he said softly. I'm just doing deliveries, I managed. I'll be gone soon. He tilted his head, as if listening to something behind me. Then he said, then you'd better hurry. The air's getting restless. I didn't know what that meant, but I thanked him anyway, turned back toward the truck, and froze. My headlights were off. I hadn't touched them. I clicked the key fob. Nothing. The light stayed dead, and then I heard it. Faint, but unmistakable. Someone whispering my name. Not yelling, whispering. From somewhere in the trees behind the house, the words were slow, deliberate, as though whoever said them was testing how my name tasted on their tongue. I told myself it was just my nerves. Rule number 6 from the list echoed in my head. If you hear someone calling your name from the woods, it is not anyone you know. Do not answer. So I didn't. I kept my eyes on the ground and walked back to the truck, but then it came again, closer this time. Hey, the voice cracked like dry leaves. Come here. That voice, it sounded like my manager's, the one who dispatches deliveries back in town. Same tone, same tired rasp. I turned before I could stop myself. That was the first rule I broke. At first, I didn't see anything, just a wall of trees and darkness. But then, between two trunks, I saw movement, someone standing there. A figure tall, still, barely visible under the pale light. I lifted the flashlight the man from the store had given me, the one marked stay. The beam flickered twice before stabilizing, and in that brief flash, I saw it clearly. The figure had no eyes, just the hollow spaces where the skin should have been. But it was smiling when the light hit it. The smile twitched, like it didn't like being seen. It tilted its head in the exact same way the man in the house had. Then it stepped forward. I stumbled back, toward my truck, hit the door handle, and dove inside. The engine turned over after 3 tries, loud enough to shatter the silence that as I sped off. My high beams flickered back on, for a split second. In the rearview mirror, I saw the figure standing in the middle of the road, perfectly still, its head turned to follow me, even though it had no eyes. I drove until the narrow road bent sharply left, back toward the center of the village. I didn't stop until I reached a small clearing near the 3rd house. My hands were shaking. I could still hear the whisper, faint, carried on the wind. Not words anymore, just a rhythm, a pattern that almost sounded like breathing. I got out and checked my delivery list. The next house was only a few yards ahead. That's when I noticed something new written at the bottom of the page, a line that hadn't been there before. Do not shine the light at them unless you want them to follow. I stared at it, throat dry. The letters looked printed at first, but as I looked closer, I realized they were written by hand, in black ink. Still wet, someone had updated my rules while I was still here. The next delivery on my list was house number 3, a tall, narrow structure at the far end of the dirt path. Its roof leaned like it had been crushed by the weight of years, and the paint on its siding had peeled away until the boards looked like exposed ribs. I parked near the gate, killed the engine, and sat there for a minute trying to steady my breathing. The whisper from the woods still echoed faintly in my skull, looping through my memory. I could still see the way that eyeless thing smiled in the dark, as if it knew me already, but I had to keep going. The rules said to finish all deliveries before midnight, and judging by how long the moon had been hanging low above the tree line, I was running out of time. I grabbed the bags, stepped carefully through the weeds, and placed them at the doorstep, 10 feet back, just like before. This time, though, the door opened immediately. A man's voice spoke from inside. "You're early." I couldn't see him clearly, only the outline of his body in the doorway. He was tall, but hunched. I thought I saw something moving behind him, a shifting of shadows. "I can come back later," I said automatically. "No need," he said softly. "You've already come this far." His tone was calm, but there was something off in the way he said it, like he wasn't talking to me, but to someone else entirely. He stepped forward into the light of my flashlight, and I felt my stomach twist. His eyelids were fused shut like the others, but there were faint red lines down his cheeks, as if something beneath the skin had tried to open them again, recently. "Your scent," he murmured. "You're not from here." The air grew colder. I could see my breath, even though it hadn't been that cold before. Then I remembered another rule. If someone comes out to speak with you, do not look directly at their face. I turned my gaze down toward the porch, pretending to check my list. He stepped closer, so close that I could hear the faint rasp of his breathing. "We used to have a man like you," he said. "He didn't stay long." My throat tightened. "What happened to him?" The man smiled, a slow, too wide curl of the lips. He stopped listening. The sound of that sentence seemed to ripple through the air, like an echo stretching farther than it should. And for the first time, I realized there were others nearby, not in the house, but around it. I could hear them moving, bare feet on leaves, a soft rustle, in unison. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but the man's smile froze me in place. Then, from behind him, something whispered, not words, just a sigh that didn't sound human. He tilted his head slightly, toward the sound. "Ah, they're awake." He turned back, toward me. "You should go now, before they remember your face." I didn't argue. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes low, flashlight in hand. As I turned toward my car, he called out one last thing. "Keep your windows closed when you drive through the fog." I stopped. "What fog?" But he'd already stepped back inside, closing the door behind him. When I looked up again, the world had changed. A thin mist had crept down from the hills, pale and heavy, rolling across the road like it was alive. It swallowed the trees, the ground, even the light from my truck's headlights until all that was left was a gray blur. I got in quickly and locked the doors. The fog was so thick now that I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. But as I sat there, I noticed something else. Faint shapes moving within it. Too tall to be people, too fluid to be animals. They glided, not walked. The outlines shifted like smoke, trying to remember its form. And then, something brushed against the side of my car. A tap, gentle fingertips. Then again, harder this time. I turned the key. The engine stuttered, then died. My heart hammered. The fog pressed against the windshield, like a living thing, and through it, I saw movement, a face, inches from the glass, no eyes, no expression, just pale skin and a mouth, whispering something I couldn't hear. I turned on the flashlight and shined it directly at the window. The figure vanished instantly, as if it had dissolved into the mist. I remembered the handwritten warning on my list: don't shine the light unless you want them to follow. But it was already too late. Something moved in the fog behind the car. Dozens of shapes closing in. The air hummed softly, like a chorus of faint, distant voices trying to remember the same song. And I realized then that the fog wasn't just weather, it was them. The fog didn't lift until dawn, when it finally thinned. I was still sitting in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The engine had gone cold. My flashlight, the one marked stay, was dead. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. The shapes in the fog had stayed near the car for hours. I'd heard them brushing against the windows, whispering softly, not to scare me, but to lure me. Every now and then, one of them would tap the glass twice, like it was reminding me it was still there. When the first light came through the trees, they vanished. Not all at once, but slowly, fading with the mist. The air felt hollow after that. I drove back to the Ashford Supply building, engine sputtering, my head pounding from the lack of sleep. The man from last night, the one with the dark glasses, was waiting at the counter, just like before. "You made it through the night," he said quietly. I nodded, then slammed the crumpled list onto the counter. "What is this place? What the hell are those things out there?" He didn't answer immediately. He poured a cup of water from an old ceramic pitcher and slid it toward me. "Drink," he said. I remembered rule number 2, don't accept food or drink. I pushed the cup back. "No thanks." His expression didn't change. "Good, you're learning." He reached under the counter and pulled out a small metal box. The latch clicked when he opened it. Inside were old cassette tapes, at least a dozen, each labeled in faded marker. Route logs, 2013, driver reports, holo recordings. "These," he said, "are what the others left behind." I stared at the tapes. "Others? You mean there were more drivers?" He gave a small, hollow laugh. "There were always more drivers. The holo needs them." He took out one of the tapes, slid it into a dusty player behind the counter, and pressed play. A man's voice filled the room, shaky, half breathless. "Still can't see them clearly, but they whisper. They whisper when the fog comes. They say, the fog remembers faces. The village used to be different before the fire, before the eyes." Static cut through, then silence. "Before the eyes?" I asked. The man with the glasses sighed. "You shouldn't have heard that." He turned away, as if he regretted playing it, but I stepped closer. "Tell me what happened here." He hesitated. Then he said, "Ashford Hollow wasn't always blind. It used to be a mining town, iron and limestone. In 1912, they found something buried deep in the quarry, a formation that shouldn't have existed. The workers called it the mirror vein." He took off his glasses. His eyelids, too, were fused shut, not scarred, but perfectly smooth, like skin that had never known sight. "They said when light touched it," he continued, "it reflected more than faces. It reflected selves. The people who stared too long began to see things move behind the reflection, their own bodies standing behind them, watching." He paused. "Then the sickness started. I didn't speak. They called it the hollowing. First, they lost sleep, then sight, then the sense of who they were. The doctor who ran the town clinic thought it was some kind of infection, but the records say otherwise. The first ones who went blind didn't die. They changed." He placed a hand over his closed eyes. "They learned to see in other ways." The air in the room felt colder again. "So, those things in the fog, they're the hollowed," he interrupted. "The ones who surrendered themselves to it. They can't leave the valley now. They see through what's left of the mist. Through memory, through you, through me. He nodded. They remember every face that looks at them, and when you break the rules, they start to follow. I stepped back. My throat felt dry. Then why send drivers here at all? Why keep this place going? The man looked down at his hands. Because the hollow still hungers. It needs to be fed, and not just food. It feeds on attention, on being remembered. If we stop sending outsiders, it fades, and when it fades, it spreads. I stared at him. You're keeping it alive on purpose. To contain it, he said softly. The deliveries are a ritual. The routine keeps the hollow stable, but the drivers, most of them don't last more than a few nights. You're the first new one in months. I tried to process it all, but my mind kept circling back to the man's words on the tape. The fog remembers faces. How many drivers before me? I asked. He hesitated. Dozens. I pointed to the corkboard full of photos. What happened to them? He glanced toward the board, his expression unreadable. They left. One way or another. Left where? He smiled faintly. Into the hollow. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, I asked the one question I shouldn't have. What happens if someone breaks the rules? He turned his head slightly, listening, not to me, but to something outside. Then, in a low voice, he said, they stop being seen by the world above. I felt the chill crawl up my neck. You mean they disappear? He shook his head. No, they remain. They just lose their reflection. The door behind me creaked open, slowly, like pushed by the wind. But when I turned, I saw a figure standing there, backlit by gray daylight. Another driver's uniform, stained, torn. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there with his head tilted, the same way the villagers did. His eyes were gone. I looked back to the counter, but the man with the glasses was already gone. The tapes were gone too. Only one thing remained on the counter where he'd been sitting. A single envelope, unmarked, sealed with wax. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photo, one I didn't remember taking. It was me, standing in front of my truck last night, head turned toward the woods. And just behind me, barely visible in the dark, was another figure, its face pressed against the glass of my truck window, smiling. I didn't remember leaving the store. One moment I was staring at the photo in my hand, and the next I was outside again, standing in the pale daylight, the envelope fluttering in the breeze. The door to the supply shop was shut behind me, locked from the inside. I knocked once. No answer. The man with the glasses was gone. The windows were boarded, as if they'd never been opened. The photo still trembled in my grip. I couldn't stop staring at that blurred figure behind me, its eyeless face, its crooked grin pressed against the glass like it was waiting for permission to come in. Something deep in my gut told me the photo wasn't just a picture. It was a warning, maybe even a countdown. I shoved it into my jacket pocket and started back toward the truck. The air felt wrong, thicker somehow, like the valley itself was holding its breath. The sky was a dull gray, colorless, the kind of light that makes you lose track of time. I needed to finish the deliveries and leave before dark. That was all that mattered now. House number 4 was at the edge of the river, a sagging cottage half buried in mist. As I approached, the ground squelched beneath my boots, water seeping through the cracks in the road. I followed the routine, dropped the bags, stepped back, wait, except no one came out. The wind picked up, carrying with it a faint humming, that same broken tune I'd heard on the first night. It seemed to come from under the house this time, vibrating through the boards. I bent slightly, trying to listen, and that was when I saw something moving beneath the porch. A hand, pale and thin, reaching out from between the boards. It wasn't trying to grab me. It was feeling the air, twitching as if blind. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. The fingers stopped moving, then turned upward. curling toward me like they could sense my presence. Something scraped against the wood. Slow, deliberate. Then another hand joined the first. I backed up further, pointing the flashlight at the porch, even though I knew I shouldn't. The light flickered, once, twice, and in that half-second pulse, I saw more than hands. I saw faces, dozens of them, pressed beneath the boards. Skin stretched thin, eyes sealed shut. They weren't moving, they were breathing. I bolted for the truck, heart pounding, mud flying beneath my shoes. When I slammed the door and turned the ignition, the radio crackled to life on its own. No station, just static at first. Then, underneath it, a voice. Delivery route incomplete. Please return to the hollow. Please complete your route. It wasn't my dispatch voice. It wasn't even human. It was too smooth, too precise. Like something imitating speech without understanding it. I ripped the power cord from the dashboard, but the voice didn't stop. It kept whispering through the speakers. Please complete your route. They're waiting. The sound rose into a low drone that made my vision blur. I hit the gas and drove until I couldn't see the river anymore. When I finally stopped, the truck's clock read 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before midnight. I'd still had 3 houses left on the list. I should have turned around, left, driven, until I hit civilization again. But the rules were clear. Deliver before midnight, never after. If I missed the deadline, I didn't know what would happen. The next house was a steep climb uphill. The path was narrow, lined with crooked fence posts. Every step I took echoed like it was being repeated just behind me. When I reached the door, I froze. Someone was already standing there. A woman in a long gray dress, her head bowed. She didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood facing the door like she'd been waiting for hours. "Ma'am," I said carefully. Her head tilted slightly. Her lips parted just enough to whisper, "You shouldn't see this." Then she turned, and I realized her eyes weren't sealed like the others. They were gone entirely, hollow sockets filled with fog. The air around her shimmered, distorting like heat above asphalt. Behind her, the shadows of the trees bent in her direction, stretching unnaturally long, drawn toward her shape as if pulled by invisible strings. She stepped forward. "You've brought the light too long," she murmured. "They smell it on you now." Before I could respond, something moved behind her, figures stepping out of the fog, dozens of them, eyeless, silent. The hollowed dot, their movements were jerky, twitching in ways that didn't match the rhythm of walking, like they were learning to move again after forgetting how. The woman smiled faintly. "Don't run. They already know your path." That was enough. I turned and bolted down the hill, nearly tripping over the rocks. I could hear them behind me, soft footfalls, many of them, all moving at once. I hit the bottom of the path and dove into the truck, jamming the key into the ignition. The headlights flickered on, and they were everywhere, standing in front of the vehicle, lining the road, motionless. Their eyeless faces turned toward me, their mouths slightly open, humming that same broken melody. The flashlight on the passenger seat began to flicker wildly. The word "stay" written on its tape glowed faintly under the light. My breath hitched. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "To who?" I didn't know. Then I hit the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires spitting gravel. I drove straight through them, or at least I tried. The moment I made contact, the world blurred. It wasn't like hitting people. It was like driving through water. Cold, heavy, suffocating water, faces pressed against the windshield, shapes swirling in the headlights. And through the noise, I heard whispers, hundreds of them overlapping. "Stay, stay, stay." The truck died mid-turn, headlights cutting out. I was plunged into total darkness. I don't remember how long I sat there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. When I finally dared to look outside, the fog was gone. The hollow was still, silent, but in the side mirror, I saw movement not behind me, inside the truck, a reflection that wasn't mine. Something sitting in the back seat. It smiled and whispered, "One more delivery." The whisper from the back seat froze me. I didn't dare move. I could feel it breathing behind me, a faint warmth brushing the back of my neck, the air pulsing with each word it didn't say. When I finally turned, the seat was empty. No one there. Just the faint imprint of a body in the dust, like someone had been sitting there for a very long time. I opened the door and stumbled out into the road, gasping. The fog was gone now, and the sky was gray with morning. For the first time, I could actually see Ashford Hollow clearly. It wasn't a village. Not really. From above the hill, I could see that half the houses weren't even real. Some were shells, empty facades with no walls behind them. A few looked freshly built, but the others, the ones near the heart of the hollow, were burned out. Nothing but frames covered in soot. The air smelled faintly of ash and rust. I knew then that I wasn't just delivering groceries. I was feeding something that should have died a century ago. I went back to the store. The door was still locked, but when I pounded on it this time, it opened easily. The interior looked wrong. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. The counter, the shelves, the floorboards, untouched for years. The lantern that had glowed the night before was cold and rusted, but there was something new. A notebook sitting where the photo had been. It was open to a page written in that same precise handwriting. The ink shimmered faintly, as if it had just been written. "If you've made it this far, you've been chosen. Keep the deliveries going. The hollow must not be forgotten." I turned the page. There was a name written on the next line. Signed, E. Carter, Route Supervisor. That name hit me like a punch. I knew it. E. Carter was the manager who hired me through the delivery app. My dispatcher. The one whose voice I thought I'd heard, whispering from the woods that first night. I flipped through the notebook, my hands shaking. Each entry dated back years. Notes about drivers, their names, their routes, how long they'd lasted before integration. And there, near the end, was a final line. "The hollow grows restless. I may have to join them soon." The pages after that were blank. I stumbled outside, clutching the notebook, and that's when I saw him. The man with the dark glasses, standing in the center of the street, facing me. Only now his glasses were gone. His eyes, or what was left of them, were black hollows leaking thin streams of mist. "Mr. Carter?" I asked, though I already knew. He smiled faintly. "You finally remembered." I backed up. "You're not real. You're part of this." He nodded slowly. "We all are, once we see it." The ground beneath us trembled faintly, like something huge was shifting under the earth. The buildings flickered, not physically, but in the way they looked, as if the hollow couldn't decide which version of itself to show me. Carter, or whatever he was now, took a step closer. "I tried to warn them," he said. "Tried to keep the old ways alive. The deliveries kept it quiet. But you," he tilted his head, listening to something I couldn't hear. "You broke the light." I realized what he meant. When I'd shined the flashlight at the figure, when I'd driven through the fog, I'd disrupted the balance he'd spent years maintaining. "Why use drivers?" I demanded. "Why not stop this?" His smile widened, showing too many teeth. "Because we can't stop what we are. The hollow is us. It feeds on memory, on repetition, on stories told again and again. Without drivers, it would fade, and when it fades, it reaches." He raised a trembling hand and pointed toward the horizon. There, above the ridge, I could see the faint outline of the highway, the same road I'd driven in on, but it looked different now. Too long. The trees leaned wrong. "Every road that remembers this place leads back here," he whispered. "You think you can leave, but you'll only circle around. The hollow doesn't let go once it's been seen." I took another step back. "You sent me here to replace you." Carter nodded once. "It was supposed to be simple, but you stayed too long. You listened. The wind picked up, and with it came that same humming. Hundreds of voices rising together from the burned-out houses. The woods, the fog that was returning again. Carter's smile faded. They're waking. You have to go. I can't. The road, go, he shouted, his voice suddenly raw, human for the first time. Finish what I couldn't. I turned and ran for the truck. But before I reached it, I heard him behind me. A strangled sound like a scream cut short. When I looked back, Carter was on his knees, the mist pouring from his eyes and mouth. The air around him rippled, and his body began to distort. Like a reflection in water, he reached toward me one last time, fingers shaking, and whispered, "Don't let them see the sun." Then he was gone, dissolved into a column of fog that rose and vanished into the gray sky. I stood there, heart pounding, alone again. But I knew now, the rules weren't just about safety. They were containment. Every one of them meant something. Every one of them was a boundary holding this place back, and I'd broken more than one. The fog was crawling back over the hills when I started running. It wasn't drifting like mist. It was flowing, twisting between the trees as if pulled by gravity toward me. Every instinct screamed to move faster, to get to the truck, to leave this valley before Carter's warning came true. But when I turned the key, the engine only sputtered. Once, twice, then silence. The radio clicked on by itself, whispering through the static, "Do not let them see the sun." Carter's final words echoed over the speakers, looped again and again until they began to distort, the voice stretching, melting. "Do not let them." I slammed my fist against the dash. "Shut up." The sound cut off immediately, replaced by another, a low groan from behind the hills. The same one I'd heard that first night, when I thought it was the wind. It wasn't the wind. I grabbed the flashlight, even though I knew it was nearly dead, and stepped out into the pale dawn. The sky was lightening. The first hint of sunlight breaking through the fog. The humming started again, distant but growing louder. At first it sounded human, voices humming in unison, slow and deliberate. But then came a deeper tone beneath it, like something massive shifting under the ground, vibrating through the soles of my boots. Carter had said they couldn't see the sun. If the fog cleared completely, whatever was beneath this place, whatever the hollow was feeding, would wake. I looked down the slope. The houses were gone. All of them. Just the dark outlines where they used to be, like burn marks on the earth. And in the center of that emptiness was the well, the one I'd passed every morning, never noticing how perfectly round it was. Now it was glowing faintly from within. I don't remember deciding to go there. I just started walking. The humming grew louder with each step, filling my chest, my skull. I felt dizzy, like my thoughts weren't mine anymore. When I reached the well, I saw movement inside, shapes shifting beneath the water, hundreds of them. Faces pressed against the surface, mouths moving in unison. "Stay," they whispered, over and over, like a prayer. I dropped to my knees. "What do you want from me?" Their voices blended into one. "Finish the route." I shook my head violently. "I can't. The road's gone. Finish the route." The water began to churn, the faces dissolving into a single spiral of mist. The light from beneath grew brighter, rising toward me until it burst through the surface, a cold white beam that illuminated everything. The fog around the valley screamed. That's the only way to describe it. An endless scream that came from every direction at once. And for a second, I saw them all. The eyeless villagers, crawling from the ground, the river, the walls of their burned homes. Their skin peeled away in the light, revealing hollow bodies filled with fog. They weren't people anymore. They were fragments, pieces of memory held together by darkness. I stumbled backward, covering my ears, but the noise was inside me now. "Stay, stay, stay." I turned and ran, following the slope toward the highway, the sunlight now breaking fully through the mist. The air shimmered, the trees bending and twisting as I moved past them. But the road didn't end. It kept curving, looping, stretching in both directions, until I realized the horrible truth. Carter had been right. Every path led back to the hollow. I could see my own tire tracks ahead of me, circling the valley again and again. My truck, abandoned moments ago, was now parked in front of me, waiting. The radio inside flicked on once more, and this time the voice wasn't distorted. It was calm, familiar, my own voice. Delivery route incomplete. Please return to Ashford Hollow. I froze. My reflection stared at me through the windshield, pale, trembling, eyes hollowed by the glow of the dawn. I reached for the notebook still in my pocket. Its pages were blank now, but as I flipped through them, new writing began to appear. Names, dozens of them, each crossed out. Then, at the very bottom, mine, and next to it, a single, unchecked box. Finish the route, I whispered. The sun rose higher, cutting through the fog completely. The humming stopped. The silence that followed was worse than any noise I'd heard. I could feel something moving behind me, but I didn't turn. I didn't need to. The hollow had gone still because it was waiting for me to make a choice. If I finished the deliveries, if I stayed, maybe I could keep it contained for another generation. Maybe the world outside would never have to know what Ashford Hollow really was. But if I left, the fog would follow me, spread. The humming began again, softer now, almost tender. It came from inside the truck. The keys were already in the ignition. The radio blinked. Route resume. My hand trembled as I reached for it. The sun hit the top of the ridge. I closed my eyes and turned the key. The engine turned over. For a moment, the truck sounded alive again, steady, humming like nothing had ever gone wrong. The radio flashed. The route map loading on the cracked screen. It showed a single glowing line leading down the hill, back into the valley, back to Ashford Hollow. I stared at it, unable to breathe. The sun was rising now, the sky a pale gold that should have felt safe. But it didn't. The light didn't warm me. It didn't reach the trees. It just made the shadows longer. I pressed the gas, slowly. The tires crunched over gravel, and the hollow came back into view below. The houses were standing again, all of them, as if they'd never burned. The air was clear, calm. Smoke drifted gently from chimneys that hadn't existed minutes ago. The people were there too. The eyeless villagers, standing in their doorways. Faces tilted toward the light. They weren't hiding anymore. They were waiting. The radio clicked softly. My voice came through again, quiet, even. Morning route begins. Please confirm readiness. My throat went dry. I'm not ready, I whispered. Confirmed, the radio replied. Proceed to house number 1. The truck began to move on its own. My hands stayed frozen on the wheel as it followed the dirt path through the rebuilt village. Each house looked the same number, same porch, same empty bags waiting at the steps, the same rules. Don't look in the windows. Don't speak to anyone who knocks from inside. Don't turn off the light. I realized then what the deliveries really were. They weren't supplies. They were offerings. Each bag, each route, each driver was another layer of repetition. Another ritual to keep the hollow sealed inside its loop. And I was the newest part of it. The sunlight hit the dashboard. The radio flickered again, and a line of text appeared on the cracked display. Welcome E. Carter, route assigned. I felt my heart stop. No, I whispered. That's not me. The radio hissed. Then my voice, or something close to it, replied, It is now. The truck rolled to a stop in front of house number 1. The door creaked open on its own, the paper bags glowing faintly in the dawn. I could hear footsteps on the porch, slow, careful, someone stepping out to meet me. The air shimmered, that same distortion I'd seen before, and the figure appeared. A young man, nervous, wearing a jacket like mine, a delivery driver. He didn't see me yet. He was looking at a map, muttering to himself, Ashford Hollow. Never heard of this place. I watched as he placed the first bag on the porch, just like I had days ago. Then he froze, sensing something wrong. His head turned slowly, toward the truck, toward me. Our eyes met, or they should have, but I didn't have eyes anymore. Just a hollow, endless dark.